All right, so welcome back to the channel. Today I am joined by Tombox from MST TV, and needless to say, I am insanely hyped. We have a bunch of topics to discuss, and I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hopefully, I don't get canceled by the end of this one. I'm all good.
Let's bet on this. Yes. All right. So, I mean, like I said before we started recording, like you were just a huge inspiration to me for getting into judging, for just loving rulings pretty much, and pursuing content creation, all of that pretty much. So, yes, I am very excited to have you here today. So, yeah.
Hey, great. Glad to be here.
So, basically, getting started with your, I guess, beginnings in the game, how did you fall in love with it? Like pretty much everything, if content creation, judging, playing, like all of it, just Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay, getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! Honestly, it's kind of silly. I think I was actually influenced by my brother's friend. Because like when Yu-Gi-Oh was on TV, it was like, oh, this is such like overly exaggerated anime about card games, and I actually didn't actually watch the show at the very beginning. But then when I saw people playing it, like it was like a Kaiba versus Yugi structure deck, and the not structure deck, starter deck, like way back in the day. That's when I got into like, oh, that's so cool. And then I basically had to get destroyed so many times. I had no concept of deck building. I have no concept. I only found like this one other person to play with. I don't even remember his name because it's been so long. But it was like Lejin beatdown versus my Yugi starter deck plus Kaiba structure deck mashed together. I'm like, I got the best monsters. And
you used both. You outsmarted all of them.
Yeah, and then I got floored so bad, like week after week. Basically, I've won no games against this kid, but I somehow stuck with the game. But then I kind of put the game on a little bit of a break because like I don't think card games is very accepted, as a hobby to bring to school or anything. So kind of, put it in the back burner. But I was always still interested. But what really captivated me was Bakura. I owe a lot to Bakura. Bakura, God. I thought it was like, I love the occult cards. I love Dark Necrophase. Dark Necrophase has still been one of my favorite cards of all time. Like one of them, not my favorite card right now, but like so like it's probably the card that got me into Yu-Gi-Oh! And
I mean, we stand Bakura.
Yeah, I love Bakura. And it gets to the point where couple years later, like 2005, man, I'm dating myself here. Like I'm a fossil now. So I guess I met a couple of guys at school. There was like a collectors club at my school. And a couple of my friends were actually in it, and they're like, "Hey, you should just come drop by, just see what you want to do here." And I dropped by, and that's kind of where I got more into the game. And it's kind of been kind of late into like high school when I really got into the game, really. And you know what? At that point, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play this game. I'm gonna be shameless about it. I'm just gonna wear it as it is.
That's fair.
Like,
that's
I'm not gonna hide it. Basically, I'm just not gonna hide it anymore. Like there's a lot of people that hid their hobbies, and you really don't know. Like, oh, does that guy actually play? Am I gonna get made fun of for playing this game? Like, there was like this whole like, do they play as well? If I don't, like, am I gonna be part of a different kind of social circle? There was all that back in the day. Nowadays, card games are kind of like mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, it's much more cool, right? To just be
definitely
to like those types of things. And when you started getting into content creation, what inspired you?
Oh, the honest truth is, I was trying to get a better job.
Okay, let's keep it plain and simple.
Yeah, I'll keep it plain and simple. I honestly was just the whole thing about making videos at the time, way back in like 2000. Well, it was actually the first video I never kept up on the channel. Actually, it was on a different channel altogether, but it was like back in 2014 when I kind of started, and I made one video with a friend, and never really advanced forward with that one. But then 2014, I wanted a better job. My current job wasn't paying very well. I was in the video game industry already. I got lucky because my brother kind of opened the door for me. A little bit of just like connections, networking, getting through there. And so I got my foot in the door, but then I wasn't paid very well as a UI artist. And the YouTube was starting to get really, really big. And like people like having 1 million subscribers are a very big thing. Millions. There's tons of people with millions of subscribers now. Back in the day, hitting 1 million was like, whoa,
Yeah.
you're crazy. You're on top of the game.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to like show that, hey, maybe I can, do side gigs as an editor. So that's kind of where I started doing it. And maybe like companies would want a social media team, which most companies now do have social media teams making videos. And even in the current job I'm in, they also have like a media team. So it was probably the smart move. But then I didn't know what I was going to be really good at. I mean, at the time when I was making videos, there was Team APS, Team Samurai X1, there was Asian Eyes White Dragon, there was
MCO40
MCO40.
probably? Yeah.
So who else was there? Farfa was there. Nim Nim was also there, but these were all like very, very tiny. Like most of us were like around 1,000, 2,000. Like Team APS was at 7,000 at the time or something like that.
Ooh.
Like we were all very tiny channels now. And so I'm like, how am I gonna get my foot in the door? And I found you know what? No one really talks about rulings. I decided to, been the ruling guy at locals for so long. I'm just gonna make ruling videos.
That's cool. That's really cool. So like looking back at like, your history in the game, what's probably one of your like fondest memories, or like, I don't know, a favorite format, or just because you said you've been playing since the beginning and like dabbling in the game?
So I guess my favorite format, or rather, let's start with the favorite deck that really got me into competitive.
Okay.
It was Teledad. 2008 Teledad was my very first deck that I would say is very competitive. Like one of my most competitive deck for sure. I think before that was Perfect Circle, but I wasn't very good. Like I was one of those kids. I wasn't really a kid. I was like one of those like young adults that got their first job and then spent so much money in the game because like, oh, now I have the money, I can buy these cards. And Dark Arm Dragon wasn't cheap. Dark Arm Dragon was like $200 to $300 card back in the day. So like making Teledad happen and really enjoying it. And back in the old days, like banlists were once every 6 months. You really got to enjoy your deck for a very long time unhindered.
That's a good point.
And so Teledad was definitely my favorite one because it got me into competitive. It taught me how to resource manage a little bit better. Like, see, like, oh, if you do certain plays, like, how is your opponent going to counter you? Now you start understanding is you're not playing by yourself anymore. You're trying to understand what other people are trying to do. So that's kind of what started my competitive mentality. Still wasn't very good. I was like, that guy that spent a lot of money on decks, but would never ever be able to compete with it at the top level. So I would be able to execute plays if I have the cards, but if I got countered, I would not know what to do. And as for my favorite format, I honestly like Dragon Rulers. I don't know why. I just couldn't drop games with Dragon Ruler. Maybe I was really lucky, like dealing with the spellbook players, but by then I would say I was already much more competent than I was like with Teledad.
I mean, of course, like it does take time, right? Could you like point out what interests you or makes you the happiest among competitive play, content creation, and judging?
I mean, it's a bit hard to answer that because like doing competitive stuff is very time consuming.
It is.
100%. There's a little bit of a like mentality shift these days. Like back, I would say even 2 formats ago, even before Cash Tier format, I would say the formats were not constantly evolving. Starting with Photon Hypernova, I mean, sure, it's only 2 sets ago. Like the format doesn't get solved. It evolves week after week.
Yes.
In that case, it's actually good for content creation because there's always something to update yourself on. There's always something to talk about.
For sure.
There's always something to be like, hey, these are the trends that are currently changing. And we have to adapt to them or else you're going to get, rolled in tournaments. And that's kind of nice. And I think that's actually a directional change from Konami's standpoint where, you know what? This actually keeps the game fresh longer. Whereas if you compared it to like tier limit format, it doesn't take very long for people to solve it. Like once it's solved, you've been playing the same form. That's why a lot of people wouldn't compete in tournaments because like it's still the same deck over and over again. But then that particular kind of like competitive play existed much longer. Like in past formats, it's always been like you just give it maybe 3 weeks and the format will be solved and people will be playing at their competitive best for those formats until like new products drop. But back in the day, when it comes to like making content, kind of driving it back to that point, is I like making competitive content because it keeps me on top of my game, and I really want people to play better. Because one of the things that is a bit lacking is, well, there's obviously going to be less great players compared to the average player, but trying to improve them is kind of like was one of the channel's mission, is just to improve everyone's play, try to get people to think outside of just copying a combo and trying to replicate the combo in real life. People need to be adaptive, and that's kind of why I wanted to make that kind of content, even though sometimes people get lost in the details, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that answered it.
No, I completely feel that, actually. It is interesting to me how, like, you can, as a content creator, you can make competitive content, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to still stay on top of your game. Like, you just do not have the hours in the day to test, or I don't, as much as I used to. For example, when I got home from work, I would literally play for like hours. In COVID, I would play USA locals in the middle of the night just because I wanted to remote duel. Literally like falling asleep on the table, just whatever I wanted to play. But it's different, when you're actually creating content, even though it is still competitive stuff. But I feel like we as content creators sort of focus on different things, like you said, pointing out text, pointing out changes and all of that to people.
There's also like a difficulty. There's always that feeling of contradiction. Like, do you want to output something, but you also want to be a genuine person? You don't want to be like, I'm going to release stuff, especially when you've developed the audience, or maybe you've developed a reputation.
Yes.
You got to stay genuine, because at the end of the day, you rather be a decent human being than than not.
Yeah, of course.
I have like there are some people that are very good in the game, but they might not be good people. And I'll respect that you're good at the game, but I'm not sure if I can trust you as a person.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
That's the difference here. And I think being a better human being is like, if you had to like choose between the two, would you rather be the best competitive player or a decent person? I would choose being a decent person first over being really good at the game.
Of course, 100%. I talked to
that's the difficulty in competitive content, right? Like, competitive content, you want to show people, so you kind of have to sometimes give up on like some of your tech, some of your advantage as a content. As a competitive player, you have to give up your advantage to showcase people, which I kind of got used to. Like, I wasn't really happy with it when people were using those texts I released, like, oh, this is my deck profile, blah 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 blah, and then I bring it to locals, and then they preemptively do plays, knowing the deck that I play. To counter me on turn 1 on game 1. I'm like, you know what?
And it's locals.
I chose to do this. I chose this life. I'm gonna accept it, and that's kind of it. Just made me a happier person that way.
That's a great mentality. I talked to Ding Kong Pham about that. He was like, when he popularized Sprite Melfi, he said that people would be like sitting down against him at events and like, like saying to the person next to them, oh, he's on Sprite, right? Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it's just, man, like he said, it's very hard to decide if you want to like release something, keep something a secret to have a bit of an edge. It's weird. It's very weird.
I think it's fair game if it's like a YCS or like maybe it's nationals or continentals for Europe.
Yeah.
If it's something like really large, I don't mind people hiding their tech. And you know what? They can showcase it after the fact. Sure. I get that there's like, oh, but if I showcase it after, the views aren't going to do as well. But you got to think about, is the video for other people or is it for you at this point? Because if you were successful with it, then you're marking down your milestone. And I think there's some value to that. Like, a lot of people don't like to do like deck profiles of some people. Like, oh, like during tournament format, do you want to cover another tournament deck? Like, the views are not going to be good. But for me, when it comes to that, if it's going to be a friend, even if it's tournament, I'll do it. This is your milestone. We're celebrating you. And kind of when it comes to like doing deck profiles, it's always about like showcasing the player, the person 100%. That you're celebrating. And like, if you take that mentality, like, you don't care about, oh, this video is going to be 10 out of 10 on your YouTube thing. Yeah. Like, yeah, you can get really sad. But if you understood the purpose of that video, then you wouldn't feel so bad.
Yeah, that literally happened in tier format. My husband topped, and I just wanted to
Mhm.
put his video out, and it did not do well, but we were excited, you know.
But exactly, it's about celebrating those moments, and it's those little moments that really like make you care about it. Like, of course, I would prefer if people gave me exclusive deck profiles, like that'd be really good. But
Yeah.
that's not how it is. Like, it's hard for people to do that. But if they do give me an exclusive, then I will definitely take it to the next level. I will treat you as the star of that video because you are the star of that video, as this is meant to cement you in, you know, the whole YouTube video and like your event top and everything about it. It's an interview. It's not just a deck profile. It's an interview about you and your success.
Yeah, and I've seen you talk about this on Twitter as well, like, you know, how you just, and I really like your mentality about, you know, celebrating the people and all everything that you said, because like a lot of people view deck profiles as low effort content and all of that. And yeah, like, what's your take on that? Do you feel like deck profiles should evolve when it comes to in general, or are you just chill with, you know, you doing your cool deck profiles?
I think the deck profile game, there's just different tiers. Like, there's different approaches. I honestly think there are a lot of people out there only aiming to get a deck list, or they just want to know like the basic combo because they need a starting point somewhere. And I think it's fine. Like, people can have their deck profile, they can showcase their deck profile, and like their deck list rather. If they're just showcasing a deck list with, you know, nothing really backing, I would call it more like a deck list, and that's fine. I think it's totally okay. Whereas if you go for something a little bit more, even I think like Jesse also commented on that one. Jesse Khan commented on that one as well, saying like, you know, sometimes it's about the details of what they are saying. Like what they say, how they tackle those issues. Those are actually the true nuggets in the video that people really should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
Because it teaches you something about the meta, how they handle it, how they got on top of the game, how they got their top. And that improves you as a player. Whereas these are not some things that the average player can discover on their own. And they needed to be pushed to the limit, pushed to the high competitive setting to really experience it. And they're sharing that experience with you. And that's what I think really matters here when it comes to, I love paying attention to that stuff when it comes to like watching a deck profile.
Oh yeah, I think the most wrong thing you can do is like just click through, like skip through, you know, pause every single time you see like a play set and just throw it in DB.
Yep, move next one. Or I mean, sometimes they can show their entire deck list. Like I remember during COVID when I did deck profiles of the people that are topping remote duels. Like for those ones, I always had their entire deck list out because I want to hear them talk. I want to hear them how they manage to handle their situations.
Yeah.
Like, sure, if you want a deck list, you can see it the entire time, but this deck listing here is just made to give you the context.
Oh yeah, or you can like be like Walter Joel and just do 20 random things, like go into fitness, like pump, show a couple play sets, continue, eat dinner, continue, stroll on the beach, and then we're done. But yeah, you know, besides that, yeah, I agree 100%. Overall, like, I feel like every single time content can be improved quality wise.
Yes.
I feel like, you know, people just sometimes, you know, they just don't feel like it. They just like being lazy sometimes with their stuff. And, you know, if they feel like it, sure. But I feel like every single time stuff can be improved and quality can always be, you know, made better.
Yes. I feel on that subject of quality is that not everyone's educated or know where to find the resources for improvement. Like a lot of it's just kind of like copy someone, like, you know, they've done this, we should just copy it. But I've been more on the forefront of changing how I output my content. A lot of the people that are really large now, they figured it out. They figured that they can definitely like shift their content style to be more adapted to their own way.
Yeah.
And that's really good. And that's kind of how like a lot of the larger tubers kind of got out of like the
I guess this
plateauing on their subscriber count because they found like a niche, a new content type to do, which is, you know, all the more for them. But like a lot of people just don't know the resources and they don't know how to put the effort into doing it. I mean, yeah, sure. Sometimes things are going to cost a little bit of money. Like you need the software, you need to understand how to use like the Adobe stuff, or maybe you need to find a free version of that, whatever the case may be. But a lot of like the stuff that I tend to learn, I learned it in school, which is like kind of like stuff that was kind of my advantage. But
Yeah,
more so, even after I graduated, a lot of stuff I learned is just YouTube tutorials. YouTube
it
tutorials,
is.
they're so concise. They're just straight to the point.
Yeah.
They definitely have the thing that you're looking for. If you're looking to
Yes.
do something, you don't know how to do it, just YouTube like a how-to tutorial.
Literally.
Like that's
Yeah.
like the biggest tip there.
But I think the hardest thing ever for people is to find information. I think acquiring information and knowing what you're looking for is the hardest part, I feel like.
Ah.
Just wording it and being like, you can't just type how do I become a better YouTuber? You can, but you're gonna get a bunch of generic tutorials. It's more so like, just actually finding the information and knowing where to improve and being like, just self-check, literally be like, okay, my sound is kind of trash. What should I do about it? And then it's just a bunch of like trial and error, basically.
There is a lot of that, and I think that's just part of the growing,
of course,
the growing process as a tuber.
Yeah.
Like my camera, like my whole process has been changed time and time again. I've been doing this for almost like eight years ish, and a lot has changed. I've been doing this part time. A lot of people think I do this full time. Even at some point, Konami thought I was doing this full time. I'm like, you guys know I work full time, right? Like I can't edit a video for you guys like midday. It doesn't work. Like I need to. I'll get back to you after I'm done my day job.
Like excuse you, but I do have a job.
Yeah, kind of a little bit like that, but like not obviously not as aggressive.
Yeah,
but like it's just like something that I needed to communicate because
of course,
like a lot of people after they hit 30K subscribers, they realize, hey, maybe we can do this full time. And some people can, like head-to-head battles. Like I think they're around 30K, they went full time right away. They had the money saved up. They can they just were ready to kind of plan it all out. They know the execution. They did the execution, and everything worked out. Especially when YouTube Shorts came out, they were just really on the money there, and they really just blew up. And you know what? Really good for them. Really happy for them.
100%. Yep. Like overall, it's always about improving and putting in the work. And I guess speaking of putting in the work, when we come to judging and the topic of that, that is kind of hard to just realize. Let me tell you. So like I said, you inspired me and all of that. But mainly, I wanted to know about rules because I would get cheated. It's just what it is. People would sit down against me. They're like, okay, you're a girl. Dope. I'm going to go, someone like said snow effect in graveyard. I was like, banished for cost. He was like, it's not a cost. And I was like, excuse you? So like people would just do weird stuff, so yeah, you kind of need to get into it. You kind of need to
you do. It is true. I think being a judge, like learning the rules is very important, but I have like a whole different like take on being a judge recently compared to that. But anyways, I kind of want to go back to like activate snow. It's not a cosmic. Okay, well, I'll activate it infinitely now. Activate.
It was so
snow can chain on top of snow, right? Like, that's broken.
It is. He went snow without cost, and then he went Nightmare Phoenix without pitching and targeting. And I was like, can you just stop?
Can you just stop doing that, please? Can you actually play properly? Because I feel like you're just now doing this intentionally.
It did feel that way.
And the word intention is such a sensitive word when it comes to judging. That is like the most sensitive word. Like I can't really talk too much about like the details of judging because the whole thing about like when you judge an event, a lot of the head judge should have told us all that like when I judge like a YCS, the first thing is all the rulings that you ever talk about within the event stays within the event. It's confidential information that's only available for judges only, and you don't talk about, you don't put it on social media. You have like a bit of a social media blackout when it comes to that stuff.
Okay,
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like there's a lot of like sensitive subjects that occur at a head judge level, and that kind of really changed my perspective because like we haven't had regionals in our area for like over 9 years, like before our last 4. But we basically had a bit of a regional drought. But recently, after acquiring our own little judge team and whatnot, and head judging a couple of regionals, it really learned about a lot of stuff. Like I judged like YCS about 3 times. I did like remote dual judging, like a lot of it. So I kind of got the hang of it. Like, yeah, you don't talk about the stuff. You don't put this on social media because it's private. This is like stuff that's like for the office to know and not really for the public.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a bit of a struggle being a content creator and being a judge at the same time. There are struggles. I never thought that it would come up, but it does come up. Sometimes I do like have my content checked just in case, because having a large audience, you could say something that's wrong and it would lead to a lot of people kind of repeating it. And that's not good. That's like bad for your reputation. It's also bad for the game in general.
Yes.
But, so that's why a lot of the times when we talk about rulings, I have to preface it by saying, yeah, this is always ask your head judge at the end of the day.
Of course. You have to.
But
you have to.
But like, I guess the thing I really want to talk about, like in terms of like my perspective of judging, I think there's a very big misconception about judges in general. Like I think they're very underappreciated, because not just because they need to know rulings. Like if you have your RC2, that's great, really good for you. You know your stuff about your rulings. But I think a lot of people think that that's it. Judges are just about handling rulings, issuing penalties. That's it. But it's like so much more than that. It's like if I were to pick people to be on my judge team, I'm looking for good communication, good attitude, good teamwork, being able to adapt to situations, problem solving. These are the qualities of a judge that no one really mentions.
Yeah. Did you ever find yourself in a situation? Of course, yeah. I mean, when I judged our regionals, it's different because our community is very, very small. So you don't even have a team to lean against. It's just you. And you're just chilling there and you're like crossing your fingers and praying, that everything is going smoothly and and that you saw the correct rulings and all of that. And I was always double checking. I had my phone out, I had the rule book put up on one tab, like some of the policy documents in the other tab, and I was just scrolling. I was just like making sure. So I think that's something that you kind of have to do, I guess, if you're sort of like on your own. But 100%, like you have to have people around you that you can, trust and just be comfortable around when it comes to like handling the people well. Sometimes I feel like it's like judges just don't get respect. You need to go to the table.
Well, it's a different take, right? Like when the players, you are the authoritative figure at the event.
Yes.
And therefore you're kind of in control of, what players are basically going through. You get to kind of guide them, especially when they make mistakes. You point them in the right direction. You penalize them so that they don't do it again. Like I know people can get pretty salty when receiving a penalty, especially a slow play. Slow play, I don't get. Like, guys, understand that slow play is not intentional. It just means that you're not playing fast enough. It kind of sucks. Like, it kind of a little bit. Sometimes they interpret it as they're incompetent with their deck and they take it so personally.
Ooh.
But I think I'm more worried that you're going to get your penalty upgraded, because slow play is such an easy to upgrade penalty. You don't write any description. Like a lot of people have a misconception about how penalties are upgraded. Like some guy can get like 5 like PE minors and still not get a game loss because they're all for different things.
Yes.
Like in the policy, when it comes to policy on penalty upgrades, it states that it has to be basically almost exactly the same thing that occurred. I may be paraphrasing. Guys, read the policy. It has to be pretty direct. And so people think that, if you get two PE minors, it's an upgrade. It can be an upgrade, but not necessarily. But some people always treat it like they don't understand like the severity of how these things are handled. But I really wish that they understood more, so that they kind of get that out of their mindset and they don't feel like they're getting different treatment or anything like that. It's not like that.
That's very true. I agree. And a lot of times people will just feel like you're biased towards them, even if you aren't. If you are being 100% professional and just going by the rule book, it's just what people do. I mean, because they're people. Like at the end of the day, it's just how they feel like, and I guess there's nothing you can do about it except for being professional, and just doing what you have to do as a judge at the end of the day.
It's a job.
Yes, and you have your obligations.
Like, I get that sometimes judges make mistakes, and like they do occur, and especially when they make a mistake and it costs you a game, that's when they get the most offended.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
Oh my god, you didn't do your job right. Blah 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 blah. I've seen, and like from time to time you see those people getting blasted on social media, That's kind of what happened to some people, and then of course the players, they faced new penalties because you're not supposed to attack people on social media.
Yes.
And
I mean,
but
yeah.
there's this whole thing, like, people are just trying to do their job. They're trying to ensure that the event, like, at the end of the day, the judges are trying to ensure that the event runs smoothly and as with as much what's that word? I somehow just lost the word. Integrity. That's the word I was looking for. They want the event to run as smoothly and with as much integrity as possible. That's their goal. Sure, some people, like, they judge, they might not be as experienced and they make mistakes, and it happens. But at the end of the day, it's about self-improvement as well. They want to improve their judging game. Like, just because someone makes a mistake, you don't fire someone on the spot because they made a mistake. You try to get them to be better people, improve. That's all. It's kind of like, no one's perfect. I know I made a mistake when I started judging too. So
did you really, like, did you take it to heart? And also, like, how do you go about, if you make a mistake, for example, I don't know if you can elaborate on that, but like, if you make a mistake, you give an incorrect ruling or whatever, and it just affects the game, whatever the game is done, do you approach the players post the game, tell them that it was wrong? If, for example, you consult your head judge,
if
you realize
they
it was
ask
wrong.
about it, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, just go ahead. Yeah.
But if they ask about it, then yes. If I talk with my, because there is this thing, like, I don't want my opponent, or not my opponent, I don't want the player that I gave the incorrect ruling to go with that incorrect ruling. So, you know what?
That's what
I would just eat it. I would maybe apologize for the incorrect ruling, because if they were to appeal, the assistant head judge or the head judge would basically correct me. And whenever I give a ruling that I'm not sure of, like, a YCS is, you are so, like, judging at a YCS, you're so fortunate that you have so many great judges with resources and ruling knowledge that you can ask them and be like, oh, if you were wrong, you should probably, if you see the player again, get it corrected, just so that they don't make that mistake, because the point is that they don't feel inconsistencies at the end. Like, oh, but that other judge did this and I got this ruling.
And that event was
everything was judged. I got different ruling. Like, what's going on? Like, the whole point is that we should be keeping things consistent. So whatever that the like the assistant head judge or whoever that's in control of the appeals, they give me how it's supposed to be ruled, then if I did it incorrectly, then I would try to kind of pass that information along in some regard to that player that I give the incorrect ruling to. Personally, that's what I would do. But even if you're giving an incorrect ruling, you're supposed to be confident when you give your ruling out.
Yeah.
And even if it's wrong, you're supposed to still give it out. Let them appeal it. If it's wrong, then we will correct it later on. And if they're not sure, they should also attempt to appeal it as well.
Okay. So, pause for a random ruling. Okay? You ready?
Cool. Sure.
Cool.
Oh my god, getting tested here.
Yes, I have it prepared. I haven't told you, but now we're pausing for a random ruling. So, what happens if sign of conflict is chained to the effect of a flunder, which would banish itself when it leaves the field? Does the effect of sign of conflict prevents the opponent from activating card effects with the same name as the banished card still apply, because the flunder gets banished by its own effect? And sign of conflict just banishes.
I need to read the card text. Can I bring up the card text?
Yeah, of course.
So negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card, and if you do, your opponent cannot activate cards that affect with the same original name. This was kind of tricky, but the thing is, Flunder monsters, because they banish themselves from removal, you're not actually getting banished by sign of conflict. And so I'm just going to give my ruling here, which is, does the second part of the effect apply? Like,
yeah, if it still applies or
not. The same name. I would say that they can still activate it, because they're not getting banished by sign of conflict. They're getting banished by their own card effect.
Okay, so basically what it says, I'm getting this from the Judges Lounge, by the way. Shout out to the Judges Lounge. They are just amazing. It says here that it still applies because...
it still applies?
Yes,
okay.
Because it gets banished by sign of conflict, and because it also gets
being banished by sign of conflict here.
Because like it gets banished by its own effect, but because it will get banished by sign of conflict in the same manner, basically, it doesn't matter because it's ending in the same location.
Okay.
So well, that's what's up.
That's good for me.
Yeah. And
well, now I know. but yeah, usually in the cases of, something that would banish itself, it is still being banished by its own effect. And
yes, it is.
It's like the details here that matter. And like, in a lot of cases where evenly match against like a Flunder player, all their cards will be
Yes,
banished face
face
up
up, face
most
up.
of the
Yeah.
time.
So
But
it was
that's
really
kind of like,
interesting.
does
Yeah.
it matter whether or not it's being banished by Sonic Conflict versus being banished by its own effect?
I guess
Now I
what they
learned
say
something.
is
You know
it
what?
doesn't because it's ending in the same location, but it is like they say that it is different if it was temporarily banished. So they also give an example of Plague Spreader Zombie versus Interdimensional Matter Transporter, which basically it just gets banished until the end phase. I think, yeah, until the end phase, and in
But
that situation, because it's getting banished by the effect of Plague Spreader, because it has to get banished,
it doesn't come back.
Yeah, it doesn't come back.
Yeah, it doesn't come back.
Yeah, so it's really interesting.
These minute details, huge difference.
Okay,
Hey,
dope. Continuing.
0 for 1.
Yes. Yes.
But hey, these are the things that sometimes a head judge would rule a certain way, and that's kind of why. These are the minute details. Like, it's on the card text, but there's like the whole unwritten rule book of
It's just stuff
how
you have
cards
to
interact.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
now I learned another thing.
You did.
Like,
I'm
location
so hyped.
matters.
Location does matter. So is there like a weird ruling that for some reason that's like doesn't apply anywhere, but it's like just very weird or complex or something that you're like?
I think it's one of the pot cards.
Yeah?
One of the pot cards is I think it's Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance. I think this is the weird one. Because if you Ash Pot of Extravagance, the other player can draw cards via card effect. Something like that. It was really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I know it says after this card resolves, you cannot draw any cards by card effect, but somehow Pot of Extravagance, like one of the pot cards had an exception for itself.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Like one of the pot cards functions differently. Yes.
Even though it's worded in a way that it should be like, oh, it did resolve, therefore you should not be able to draw cards or something like that.
But it like resolved negated or something like that? It's like some kind of...
It's so bizarre. Like, and then it just has its own specific ruling saying, yo, if this card is, negated like by an Ash Blossom, then you can still draw cards or something like that. It was really silly. Like, I was so confident that you couldn't, but then someone showed me up on that one. I was like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
I think it's like
that's
one of the
neat.
pot cards.
I wonder if that was the right pot card. I think it was Extravagance.
I don't know. I'm looking at it now, and I think if you Ash it, you can draw. So like it
it's
negates
so weird.
the entire
but like because
thing.
it's worded on a separate sentence, it feels like, what's going on? The card did resolve.
It is.
I can't
weird.
remember if this was the card. Guys, in the comment section, you guys can correct me on
Let
this.
us
It is
know.
one of the pot cards that is a bit more bizarre.
Yes,
so that's the weird one that I had to like remember.
It is weird. Also, guys, if you're still watching, we appreciate you. Make sure to give the video a like and all of that, and let us know if you have any weird rulings that we need to know about and catch up on. And yeah, moving on to sort of a different topic, because you do a lot of things, dude. You even made your commentary debut, so we need to talk about that. That was hype. So how do you feel about that? It was really cool. Like I enjoyed your commentary. I
was super nervous.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I think commentary is almost as hard as playing to some degree. Like there's so much knowledge you need off the top of your head.
Yes.
Like, can you imagine playing against a matchup you don't know? You get to slow down, pick up the card, and read it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you're doing commentary, you don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
It almost feels like you're judging the match and trying to talk about it at the same time. And you've got to know your stuff. So when it comes to like preparation, like I had to do a lot of preparation for it. And the thing I did was like I just played so many games. I looked at so many videos. I looked at so many profiles that normally I wouldn't even bother looking at, because I would be like, yeah, they probably wouldn't, make top cut. These are like not meta decks. I looked into all of them. I had no choice. I needed the knowledge. I needed to be able to like just pull it out of the top of my head whenever I want to talk about it. But the communication part wasn't too difficult, because the communication part, like just kind of talk about the matchup, like that was something I did before COVID. Before COVID happened, I did like live duel commentary like quite frequently actually. Like a lot of people actually don't know this. Like especially the newer people on the channel, they don't know that I did a lot of like commentary games. I would go to locals. I would record a game at locals, usually the finals, between the two people that are undefeated. Typically, there's like one or two players that always make it to the end. Sometimes I make it to the end, and it's really awkward commentating over my own game because you know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, right.
But like, and you sometimes refer to yourself in the third person. But that being said, like talking about the game is the easy part because you can always like anticipate stuff. But I think the hardest part was trying to fill the time when there are problems that come up. You have to learn to fill in the gaps here. There's lots of things to talk about in Yu-Gi-Oh, which kind of makes it a lot easier. Like being a tuber definitely helps with this front because there's like so many things that you can kind of bring to the forefront, kind of bring to attention, and then once the problems are resolved, you can get back into the game. Just like flip that switch and you got it. And it was really fun that Konami gave me that opportunity to do so. It's very uncommon. Like typically they pick people with like worlds experience and whatnot, and I definitely don't. Well, I don't have like hold on a second, this is sounding kind of weird. Because I have gone to worlds in 2000.
I knew what you were gonna say
as an influencer.
Yes.
And I did play in a tournament there. It was actually behind the scenes. Like on my Facebook I have a picture of that final round. It was me versus Trader Online Video, and we were the two finalists.
That's really cool
for that. And both like I got creamed in the finals. It was so hard, especially when I lost the die roll and he built an unbreakable board. And we were both playing Crusadia Thunder Dragon. It was super hard. And we played through like two pods too. You played through like your own pod, and then you played a winner's pod, and then you get to the finals. That's like something that no one ever actually got to see, which was the influencer tournament. And I guess so. Yeah, I guess they do pick people with like experience, like I guess, and they pick like Asala. They have Aaron Furman. Like they were also commentary. Of course, they have Konami staff as well. So I was really honored to have the role to commentate, and they like it was good. It was good.
I mean, like I can imagine it has to be hard. Like, were you nervous about, that might be a weird question because English is not my first language, but were you nervous about speaking in a bit more official manner, or like how you need to like express yourself?
So that's a good question. That's a really good question. I think my biggest concern wasn't adapting my speech because I try to be YouTube friendly on camera most of the time, but when I'm talking in real life, I'm probably not YouTube friendly at all. And so adapting my speech wasn't too difficult, but like using the official terms was a bit more difficult. Like you can't say, like we try to avoid saying certain terms because they're just coined by the community. Certain things are okay. Like I think floodgates are okay because there's just not much you can really replace it with. It's like it's an oppressive card. That sounds kind of worse. It's just like you still have to like make sure the commentary flows nice.
He flipped an oppressive card, anti-spell free.
He flipped a very oppressive game state changing card. Like there's just sometimes it's just easier to convey the message like, oh, that's a floodgate. Now spell cards are gonna have to be set before they get to be played. Like like we still want to, because sometimes players play pretty fast and you have to keep up with them a little bit. But like understanding a lot of decks, like is the hard part, I think. And actually Konami made a lot of stuff more transparent now with the new policy about live streaming. Like that, like a lot of stuff that was kind of like behind the scenes when picking a feature match, they just put it on the policy. You guys know exactly what it is now.
I like that a lot, but I feel like not enough people really went through the changes. I did it just for fun. I literally spent like 2 hours reading through the changes, writing stuff down. But I can imagine not a lot of people were genuinely enjoying in that.
I did a full run of every single change in the policy.
I saw that
as well. Yeah, not a lot of people well, I guess a decent amount of people watch it. I'd say like enough people that I think it was still worth my time. But a lot of the changes, like I think like policy changes, a lot of people have just knee-jerk reactions because they're not judges. Judges have a completely different mindset when it comes to reading the policy. 100%. But when it comes to players, they just like jump the gun sometimes. Like they just assume certain things. And I'm like, that is so wrong. Like
I mean, there's a lot of ignorance there, right? Like, what comes to mind when you think about the policy changes? Like, just your thoughts, basically. What's the most important changes, or like what you like, or maybe even dislike on a personal
The thing that I like the
note?
most, I think that with the most impact, time change. 45-minute rounds
Yeah.
for tier 1 events. Because originally it was only for like tier 3 events.
Yeah.
But tier 1 events having it as well, definitely a big game changer. There's been a lot less people playing into time to burn someone.
Mm-hmm.
A lot less of it. In fact,
Mhm.
rounds actually end faster. And
Yeah.
in a recent
Because you're not stretching it
regional
out to get to the 40-minute mark to burn the opponent.
Exactly. People
Yeah.
aren't like, I'm gonna do a 7-minute combo just to burn you to death.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
no,
not
they look
doing
at the
that.
time, they're like, oh, 15 minutes left. I'm not about to do that.
Like just play out your game. Now you
Yeah.
have time to think. You don't have to worry. You have time to side deck. You don't have to rush. It's like probably one of the most positive changes. When there was like the other change, I like the examples that they give. That's also a really
Yes.
big thing that they
Yes.
gave in the policy change. The example change, like they gave about public knowledge, private knowledge, the examples of how judges should answer questions. That was a big one.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the biggest struggles as a starting judge. If you're starting to judge, you should read those example questions because it teaches you how to answer questions. Sometimes an illegal thing could happen during resolution. Sometimes illegal things happen during the activation. But how do you deal with the ones that are happening during resolution without telegraphing cards to the opponent? That's so hard. But you still have, because it would result in an illegal move, you still need to communicate that so that it doesn't happen. Because I've seen some like I'm not calling anyone out. It's just something I've seen in the past. It's just that I've seen judges not answer questions. Certain judges didn't answer questions. And then when the player did a certain move, they're like, oh, that's illegal. You can't do that. But then why did you answer his question?
I mean, did they even penalize the player for making an illegal
They penalized,
move?
like, give him a PE minor.
Oh my god!
I'm like, why would you do that? Feels so bad. You literally trapped the guy. You trapped the guy into bad because you could have answered the question, but you didn't.
Oh my god!
That's why I think like the policy change, giving us those examples, really teaches judges how to answer questions. I really appreciate that because those examples were really, really good. And I do recommend players giving it a bit of a read as well because it kind of showcases what judges can and cannot answer. And I think it's big.
So this brings us to a segue to pause for a ruling question.
It actually you're throwing all these hard questions at me. Am I gonna go 0 for 2?
Yeah, that's what I'm aiming for. No, just kidding. So this is not actually, it's not about rulings, it's how you would go about resolving this issue. It's more so an issue. Again, from the Judges Lounge, we love Judges Lounge. Player A controls 2 Aqua monsters, has summoned 5 times this turn. Player A also has a Rivalry of the Warlords face up. And player B tries to activate Nibiru, which Nibiru shouldn't be able to activate as he would summon a non-Aqua on player A's side. But both players are unaware of this. They let everything resolve, and about 4 turns later, they realize it. They call a judge, and they explain what is the ruling supposed to be. Is it an accepted game state? Is it malicious? Should there be, some kind of...
So we have identified that the Nibiru could not have been activated.
Yes.
There's 2 Aqua monsters. It happened anyway. And so... then they played 4 turns, and then they call a judge.
Yes.
And so, what is the issue here? So, the first, who's the controller of the Rivalry of Warlords?
The player that controls the Aqua monsters. 2 Aqua monsters, and has summoned 5 times the one that was Nibiru. So the opponent had the Nibiru. He activated it illegally because his opponent controls Rivalry. And then after Nibiru resolved, now they have a Rivalry and a Nibiru face up. The Nibiru token.
And there's a Nibiru token and a Nibiru face up on the field.
Yes.
And then they play 4 turns. Does anything in the 4 turns matter?
I don't think it does.
So assuming that nothing matters, there's the game state obviously cannot be repaired due to the fact that cards were drawn, cards were played. So the question now becomes, is it an accepted game state or is it irreparable game state? It really depends on significant advantage here. Like, did one player gain additional advantage over the other because of the Nibiru? Was someone actually going to lose because they got, because they were going to get Nibiru'd? But in this particular case, at the very least, both players would be receiving at least a PE minor because the card that activated and the person that had rivalry, they are both responsible for knowing these cards.
Yes.
So that already, both players would receive PE minors on that front because you could have reminded your opponent that, hey, I have rivalry up. And the person activating, well, Nibiru, obviously that was an illegal play. So there's at least PE minors for both players already. The question now becomes whether or not it is irreparable, which
or
would
accepted.
lead to the person more at fault receiving a game loss for a PE major.
So that's basically what people said. Like, what happened in this? I guess it was a situation from two people actually playing because someone, not sure if it was a judge, I guess they were just talking about how they would resolve it. And they said that it was supposed to be accepted game state. And they said that they wouldn't even issue any penalties, which I think is kind of weird. Like a PE minor
No, you do issue a penalty. You would issue penalties here. There's no way that you would not issue a penalty here because illegal moves did occur. Even if it's retroactively giving them the penalty, you would still give them the penalty. Even if it's like double PE minor and it would be an accepted game state. Because the reason why I asked, like, if there's like significant advantage here, where if someone would actually lose the game because of this, then it would have been an irreparable game state.
Yeah, and you would penalize the opponent.
And significant advantage was incurred by one player. So the person that gained that significant advantage would, or that caused it, or the one that's more at fault would be receiving that PE major. That's kind of how I would assess it. So I would like the information, what happened between the two.
Yeah, I mean, I would too. There's not much more on the post, which I'm sad about. But I figured that's how it was supposed to go, right? You would have to
but definitely, there definitely would be penalties issued to both players. Because illegal plays did occur. You got to make sure that they don't do it again.
Of course.
But that's how I would approach it.
Yeah,
so
of course.
That kind of gives you the context.
Cool. Love this. I love the random ruling intermissions. So basically, we are almost at the end, actually, with this ruling intermission. But I did want to switch gears. I wanted to talk about something else as well to really round it off on a positive note. I read your tweet about what is your biggest Yu-Gi-Oh! Insecurity? And what I really loved is the fact that you actually addressed this. I think it is incredible that you decided to talk about it and you literally went out of your way to answer to everybody replying. I think it was just really nice. And I wanted to give you props for this. And I think it's like, what brought you to, I guess, talking about this? I feel like these kinds of topics should be talked about and addressed in the community.
I just feel like people need to understand that there are other people that feel the same thing like they do. Like, whether or not you're scared of every play you do being a misplay, you feel uncomfortable when people are watching you play. I just want people to know that this is a community. We're not alone in this. We're all together. Like, we're all people. We all share these kinds of experiences. And if there's anything that I could do to help you kind of overcome this or help you understand that, hey, this is normal, but there's definitely ways that we can work towards being better and feeling less insecure about ourselves. Everyone starts at a certain point, especially when it comes to like gameplay, misplay, illegal plays, all that stuff. Like, everyone starts at a certain point, and you shouldn't let those things get you down. Like, I think as a judge, one of the biggest insecurities is like giving out the wrong ruling. Like, if you give out the wrong ruling, it feels really bad because you might have messed up someone's experience. But knowing how to rectify those situations, or being like typecast as a certain player, like I'm more than this kind of player. But you just have to make sure that it's all about your individual performance at the end of the day, and whether or not someone sees you a certain way, that's up to them. But you shouldn't be confident about who you are and just feel good about what you've done. Sure, some people might not have like achieved what they wanted in the game, and I get it. You're setting yourself towards a goal and you want to achieve it. But you can, everyone works at a different pace. Everyone will get the game at a different pace, and it's okay. But at the end of the day, I just hope that you're enjoying the game and enjoying the people that you're playing with, and everyone should feel safe. That's kind of why I kind of brought that topic about. And everyone must find a way that they are relatable to each other, and that's kind of how people connect in the game.
I think that's really, really nice. I feel like the most important thing is to really find your space and feel comfortable. Like, literally no one's forcing you to play the game. So if you enjoy it, you best enjoy it like to you know, however much you can. Like, I think that's, yeah, like I said, it's really, really important to talk about these things, because a lot of times we get caught up in, you know, stuff like, oh, I haven't talked in a while, or maybe, oh, I'm not as great at rulings, like people, I don't know, cheat me or something. Like, there's many random things that people will get insecure about. And just talking about this and admitting to each other that we are just human, I think is a very good step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess with that, I really wanted to end it on that kind of note, and I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank you, Tombox, for being a part of this. Like I said, I was super hyped, and I think this conversation was really, really nice.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So yeah, make sure to give a video a like, and also make sure to go check out Tombox. I will make sure to have all of his socials in the description box below. I want to thank you guys again for watching, for all the support. Make sure, you know, to support even more. We appreciate you. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Hit it. Bye.
Destroy it.